Alright, so now we're going to create an application with Expo. Of course, we are not going to use Expo on this course, but I'm going to just show you, show you how to do pretty much everything with Expo right here, how to load an application and how to get it on the simulation. Everything else, we're going to learn React Native, not using Expo, just using native dependencies. I'm going to tell you why later, but right now we're gonna focus on creating an application just with Expo. So I'm already inside the directory where I'm gonna put all the files, and it's called expo_test. And you can use you can put whatever you want for the name. Now I'm gonna use the terminal. I'm gonna go here, and let me just make it a little bit bigger. So to start an Expo application, of course, we've already need to install. We've already installed the tools for Expo, the CLI. We need to do Expo init, and then you just need to put the name of your project. Now the thing is that I'm already inside this directory on this command, and if I install it right here, it's gonna bring a directory. Now before we could do a dot and it will just bring the files, but it's not really working lately. So I'm gonna do cd, and if I do ls, I'm inside the parent directory of this directory, the Expo test. Now what I'm gonna do, now I'm going to do expo, then init, just like this. And I'm going to call the project the same name I'm using right here, expo_test. Now I'm going to press enter, and it's going to ask me, what do you want to create? Choose a template. So you have several choices right here, and the Expo keeps changing the whole time, and that's one of the reasons why we are not using Expo. And just, for example, a couple days ago, this interface was a little bit different. I reinstalled the tools today, and now it's giving me different options. And if I try to find the documentation about this, which is self-explanatory, but it doesn't matter. If I try to find the documentation, I'm not, I'm not going to be able to find anything. I'm just not finding anything. And of course, this is pretty much self-explanatory. You get a blank with a managed workflow. With the tabs, they're going to give you some tabs at the bottom, and then just bare minimum pretty much blank. But I'm going to use the blank. I'm going to press enter, and then it's going to ask you, what's the name of your application? Well, in this case, I'm just going to use the same name of my application, Expo test. And this is the name that's going to show on your screen when the application boots. So in my case, I'm just using the same name for my project, Expo test. I'm going to press enter, and it's going to start doing things. So notice it already entered to this directory and started downloading all the dependencies. So it's going to take a second, and I'll be right back. Okay, so everything got installed, and then it says to get started, you can type cd expo and then npm install. So the thing is that this installer thinks that I'm running this from the terminal, right? So I'm on the parent directory, and then I install everything into the the child directory. The thing is that I'm not doing this, and I'm using VS Code, so we can all use the same terminals. If you're a Windows user, you get the same terminal, and if you're a Mac user, you use the same terminal. In real life, if I'm on a Mac, I use the integrated terminal. If I'm on Windows, I'm working on Windows because of course I work on both computers. I use this terminal because the CMD of Windows really sucks. In this case, since we can cover both scenarios with this one, using this one. So I'm already inside the directory. In this case, I'm going to do ls. I'm on the parent directory actually. So I'm going to do cd expo_test. And then I'm going to do ls, and we get all the files. So I'm going to do clear, and I'm going to do npm start. You should do the same thing, right? Enter to your directory if you're not already inside, and then do npm start. Now this is going to do a lot of things. It's going to start a development server with Expo, and it will attempt to get a simulation of your computer, and this is what you're going to get, right? This is what you're going to get. So you can do two things. You can run the application on a simulator in your computer, in this computer, or you can run it from your phone. Now if you go to Google Play, let me just try to find it right here, Google Play. Let me just show this to you. 1 second. Was not going to do this, but why not? So if we search for Expo, we're going to get this application, this Expo project. So this will not run in your computer. This is an application for your phone. So after you will need to install it only if you wish. If you install it, you will need to, of course, log in, register, and everything else. Now, I'm going to open it in my phone. I'm not going to be able to show you from my phone, but I just can tell you what's going to happen. After you install this application in your phone and you open the application, uh, first you will need to log in, or I believe you could run it without logging in. But the first screen, you're going to get something that says scan QR code. Now, if you tap on that scan QR code, of course, you will need to pause the video, download the app, and everything else. If you tap on that one and you go back to your project, I'm just doing it right now, and you scan your application, it's going to load the application you have right here. It's going to transfer all the files, do the conversion, and show a version of this application in your phone. You know, that's really cool. You can run the application you're building with hot reloading and everything else from your phone. Now remember that this is not running natively in your phone. It's doing a simulation with the Expo application. So what's rerunning, it's the Expo application. Now when you run this, it's going to open, and let me just make this a little bit less bigger. There we go. And I'm going to bring the Chrome. I'm going to bring this. So when you run your Expo, it's going to give you kind of a development control panel, right? And this is my phone. I have a cheap phone. I don't really like expensive phones. I live in a dangerous country, so if you have an expensive phone, you're in trouble. So okay, now of course I cannot show you on the screen what's happening right now. If you're running it on your phone, you're gonna see something like open up app.js to start working on your app, and this is what you get when you go to here. So if we go to our application, the main file where everything starts, which is the app.js, this is what you get in your screen. So of course, if I just maybe change something right here, something else, and I click save, of course I save the file, the application will reload in your phone and it will show you what you have on the screen, right? It's going to show you something else. Now, of course, I'm gonna run it with the iOS simulator, and of course you can do this. You can, if you are in Windows and you installed pretty much everything, you can run it on an Android device emulator, but don't worry, we're gonna do it on the next section, or you can run it on iOS. I got everything installed in my computer to run this. I'm gonna do it so we can get the same thing on the screen. You don't need to do this. We're gonna do it in the next couple of sections, right? We're gonna run our application without Expo on the real device emulator. Now, if you do it from here, of course, if you run the simulator or the Android, you're gonna get the application. But again, this is not a native application. This is an Expo application. It's the Expo container, right? That's what's really happening. So let's give it a minute. Now, maybe in your computer, you're gonna see that your application it's building really slow, and that depends on the computer. This is a really fast computer. The Mac I'm using right now, it's really fast. So it takes under a minute to bundle everything. If you have an old computer, I have an old computer just with a standard HD drive. It takes like 6 or 7 minutes. That's standard. And this is because this computer has SSD, 16 gigabytes of memory, and and all of that. So that's why it's taking under a minute. Maybe if you have a slow computer, if it takes 5 or 6 minutes, that's normal. Go and get a coffee. So notice that when the application boots and everything is ready, I'm getting the something else, which is what we got in our our application. And of course, if you change it to something else and you save it, the application will reload and reflect the changes. So of course, it's working with Expo. It's really simple, right? And it's kind of fast. The problem is that, again, we are running an application with a container on top of a container on top of a container. So again, you're not really running a real application. It's working on top of a frame, a container. Now, what we're going to do on this course, we're going to create the applications, the native application, and we're going to use a native environment. Of course, we are still using React, which is a frame. But then we're gonna run the simulation on a real device, like here in a real simulation with not with Expo, and then a real simulation with the Android. And these are the two ways you get in building an application. With a standard configuration, with just the real device, the real no Expo, and then of course, you get it with Expo. Now, there are some things you cannot do with Expo, like manage native dependencies or something like that. Expo, it's working on that right now, so you can run a version of your most native raw code and run it in Expo, but it's not there yet. It's experimental. Not there. We are not there with Expo. But of course, we're gonna not use Expo. We're gonna use just the native way of do things. Because if you learn the native way of do things, the raw way, you can still use Expo, right? Okay, that's good. On the next section, we're gonna create an application not with Expo. And we're gonna run it, of course, on the simulator. All right, let's go to the next one.